if we tell better stories from the beginning and we understand the science of storytelling itself, and we use our stories not just to make film, but to make meaning, and stop telling love stories and in-law stories and juju stories, and we're creating bad models for our society and we're just kind of creating models of infamy.
Okay, so you know when we take It's a Wrap outside the studio, it's important and it's necessary. Okay, I'm on the island today and I'm here with an embodiment of film, if it's right to say that word. He's like an uncle to me because he's known me for a while. Yeah, I always like to put that in so you guys know the relationship that we have. And he's also the CEO of 024 Media. His name is Mr. Femi Odugbemi, popularly called Uncle Efo in the Nollywood space. It's good to have you, sir.
It's good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
You know, very much. It was imperative I had this, to sort of boost my career.
Of course not.
Yeah, but the first question I want to ask you is the veil, right? So it's a thing. So whenever I say Uncle Efo, they just say the veil thing, the man with the veil. Let us know what the veil is about.
Well, actually, nothing very mysterious. I like scarves because sometimes, it's an interesting color to what you're wearing. But when I was Academy Director of the Multi-Choice Talent Factory, one of my students was very passionate about documentary. Oh. And she went back to Benue during the break and did a really amazing documentary capturing the story of the internally displaced people in Benue. That time, Nigeria was really abuzz with this thing about, people killing people in their farms and all of that. So the IDP were like a forgotten people whose lives had been totally upended. So she brought me a couple of Benue scarves as gifts, and both of us agreed that I would wear it to create a memory for people of the IDPs of Benue. And the more I wore it, the more people asked, and the more I talked about the IDP camps of Benue. So for me, that's one way of supporting the work that mentee was doing, and to also underscore the fact that, a very young, wonderful producer like her not only wants to make money and make films, but to make meaning. That's really why I wear the scarf.
Yeah, I mean, good thing. I think I'm going to have to start, adapting, because, we need to keep that conversation going. I think they need the same attention. They need as much attention as any other person talking about the guys in the IDP. Okay, now let's talk about film, which is why we're here. Nollywood. You've been in this space for a long time. And I could start from tinsel. I could start from a number of stuff for a long time. Now, when you started and now, what would you say has changed mostly?
Oh, Nollywood has grown in quantum leaps, actually. We in almost every aspect, the kind of stories told, the quality of performance, the quality of cinematic understanding, the visuality of our films. The level of investment now allows better skills, allows, more talented collaborations. So for me, Nollywood just 10 years ago and Nollywood today are not comparable. I'm really pleased with a lot of the films I see. Of course, I've been head of the MVCA jury for quite a few times. So I get to almost practically watch this evolution. And I think, in many ways, we have to give credit to succeeding generations of artists and filmmakers and storytellers in Nollywood who obviously have had pressure to up the game. But me, the biggest salute I give when I talk about Hollywood is to the audience. Because, from day one, the Nigerian audience was very well aware of the deficiencies of our products at the time. Many of them already had access to satellite films, satellite Hollywood films, so they know what it looked like to have global standards. But they were also very pleased that we were telling our own stories and that they could see themselves on the screen. And that ownership of that platform by the audience, meaning that they would watch it regardless of its. They invested in it. Many of them became investors in Nollywood. That makes them the real champion, the real heroes of the story. I think that the only response that Nollywood could have is to continue to get better with the stories, get better with the acting, get better with the, with the technicality. And of course, now we are closing down on 30 years. So there's also a shift of generations that are when Nollywood started, it was organic. Not many people had formal training. Today, practically all entrants into Nollywood have formal training of some kind. Because formal training is not only when you go to school. Sometimes formal training is also self-training. So there are resources online. There are people who are at home doing monologues in front of a mirror. There are people who are working as extras, trying to get an idea of how this works. So there is a sense in which people are preparing themselves for what they want to achieve inside Nollywood. And if we keep up that energy and that process, it will keep getting better. When all is said and done, 30 years is a blip in the history of anything. Hollywood is over 100 years. And when I was in film school in the 80s, they used to show us Nollywood in the early 20s and 30s. It was just as crap as what we were making in our early days, because they too, especially when they were making silent films, they didn't have the resources either. But they stuck with it. And today they're making stuff with AI and doing amazing things. And I feel if you stick with anything and you keep doing it, as simple as that phrase is, practice will make perfect.
Okay. Now, talking about shift in generation, there's something I wanted to ask. So I was on a production with Anoji, and we were talking about the new age actors, new age productions, and she told me something. She said back then, the only thing they had was film. So they had to do everything to make sure that it happened for the actors now and for those producing. So they didn't have any other option. Now you see guys that are into film and paddling into something else. Do you think, to some extent, the fact that there's no exact focus on film now, the fact that people have like 10 jobs and film is just one of them, has that in some type of way affected the process or the kind of films that come out from either the cinemas or VOD platforms these days?
Generally, I don't think so. I always say that, real talent can't be denied. If you have talent, it stops you from doing many different things. Why should the number of what you're doing diminish the quality? Strong talent always shines. It just shines. And I think, you can hone it, you can make it better, you can make it fit for purpose for something or the other. I always say, today, because there's this multiplicity of platforms, the artist is more empowered. And that to me is important. There is nothing our actors are doing here that they're not doing abroad, everywhere. And the truth is, there are people who think of film like religion, and they are like the priests of this. That kind of thinking is silly. film is popular art. It only works when there are, artistic confluence of different skills.
Yeah.
But whatever the product is, it's of little purpose unless there's an audience for it.
Yeah.
The connecting thing between the creators and the audience is this undefinable magic that is created by actors. The actors take material, but the same material, we can like it with one actor and not like it with another. It's all it's a brew. That's what I say. And I love the whole process because it's one of those things where when it works, the audience tells you, you'll know it. And for me, we need to just keep encouraging those who bring that magic. We need to push them to, higher, stronger performances. We need to challenge them. I don't think our actors are the problem. We have some very, very incredibly talented people naturally. And then we've also had people who've got some amazing training. And then people who have had practice over many years. They really are very good. Where we need to grow is in the quality of what we demand of our actors. Our writing is poor. We're writing really poor stuff. That's the truth. There's a lot of material that is regurgitated. So for me, that's where I've put in my skin in the game. I taught for 5 years at the Talent Factory, focusing on us telling better stories. If we tell better stories from the beginning and we understand the science of storytelling itself, and we use our stories not just to make film, but to make meaning, to actually find big issues. And our country is filled with big issues. And stop telling love stories and in-law stories and juju stories and, I want to make money stories, all these, hustle kingdom stories. And we're creating bad models for our society and we just kind of creating models of infamy for our audiences. What we don't understand is while film is a reflection of society, film also has power to foreshadow a different society. As long as what you show us is what we experience, you actually almost deepen it in the culture. Because younger people take their models from art. And for me, the writers are lazy because they keep writing what I experience every day already. It tells me there's a limitation to their own capacity because they are writing only to the limits of their experience. But storytelling is also about deep research. It's also about taking me back into history. It's also about taking me deep into the future. It's about creating a magical reality that allows me to say, oh, I could be that guy in another 5 years, in another 10 years. I could take this technology and create a solution for Nigeria in this way, like that guy did. I could become a great police investigator and fight crime like that guy. Not that you keep showing me a corrupt police. I already see that on the road every day. And then not that you show me, government officials that are corrupt. You're just creating more. Because there are some that look at the way you even showed the corruption and use it as their own template and how to do
in
it.
reality.
So for me, our actors are wonderful. They're ready for the challenge. Our directors are really getting much, much better at visuality and how to tell a story visually. And technically, people are doing some amazing stuff.
With a story.
But the storytellers are the same, regurgitating the same thing. Love story, love story, love story, love story. But here we are, over 5,000 love stories. We have worse marriages, poorer relationships. So basically, even in the love stories, we're not making our society any better. People think it's okay to just have several relationships, to take from your partner. Love is about collecting, giving, finding money, who can pay, and all of that nonsense. Even if we were making better meaning in love, I would say, okay, maybe we could go on, we could specialize in that. But we're writing crap. There are, of course, I'm generalizing. There are what I call bright stars in our writing firmament. There are people who are taking on tough stories, but we need numbers, We need them to multiply. So now I'm supporting everyone that's creating a lab around storytelling. Some of my students created a digital lab, Alban Show. I'm very keen to support what they're doing because I think they're going to generate many more better writers. There are so many other labs that are emerging. There are also writers who are now going to labs abroad, like Realness Institute. Now I've got like 2 or 3 of our writers who have gone to Realness Institute in South Africa, and they're doing stuff. Netflix is creating, Grow Creative. Of course, the MultiChoice is focused on storytelling forever. So there are well-trained writers, but the numbers are too few. And what needs to be focused on is the process. The idea of coming up with a story in 3 days and having a script in 5 days and suddenly you're shooting in 10 days needs to stop. It's rubbish. So the idea is not just to make film, but it's to make a film that has meaning, that has purpose, that people can look at, yes, be entertained, enjoy it, but can think. Because right now, we have a society that only the artistic instinct can save. Too many stories on our social media reflect our worst instinct as a people. And when you call your country a jungle, how do you think everybody will behave? Like animals. And we cannot keep dreaming to have a better country, but creating art that doesn't show us how. Art is public intellectualism. Art is poetry. Film is much more than just content. Film is a very thoughtful process. And you can't call yourself a filmmaker because you got a phone that you're swinging like a weapon of mass destruction, or because you can show your body, or because you can create nonsense on social media. TikTok is not filmmaking. And then I think that's one of the things that is important for us to know, so that we don't keep talking about a Nollywood. And I admit that Nollywood is now a generic description of Nigerian cinema generally. And if that be the case, don't let's make it TikTok. Let those doing TikTok and content do what they do. And let those who are willing to subject themselves to the process of filmmaking, to the challenge of it, to the difficulty of it, who are looking for a broad audience, also, find their niche.
That's really strong. I totally agree with the story. Story needs some more refining to do. I talk about it in my previous episodes, and when I do, it feels like I'm sort of attacking. But I appreciate the work of the performance, the actors, the performers. But I think the story needs some work. But you talked about Netflix just a bit. I wanted to ask you about this advent of VOD platforms in Nigeria. There are a number of them now. There's Netflix, there's Prime, and the kind of movies that go on these platforms. Now, what is your take on Netflix and Prime in Nigeria? I understand the good that they are doing, but I'm still not balanced enough on the process of getting films into the different platforms. But what is your take on Netflix and Prime in Nigeria, and how better do you think we can take advantage of all they're bringing in to even ensure a better process for filmmaking and the kind of films that we tell?
Well, I think sometimes we talk as though streaming is new. Streaming isn't. Showmax was here for many, many years. And of course, in the early days, what used to be called the Magic Channel was here. Which was also powered, satellite-wise. So yes, but let me tell you what I think is a principal advantage when these platforms are interested in the Nigerian story. I think it's a wonderful thing. I think it's a wonderful thing for us when we actually have an honestly global platform. And I say honestly global because a lot of those stories are geo-blocked anyway. In which case it's not better than what Iroko was doing. I think it's very vital that, there is a democratization of process. Remember, what these platforms are replacing used to be called marketers. And those marketers basically each had a group of people they worked with. They were like a conveyor belt, just pushing out every Friday. There was a market of films that came out, and each market, and remember, they became a cartel. There was a time they actually banned Genevieve. They actually tried to ban an artist from working. There was a time they even declared they were banning Jokes over.
They call it blacklist or something.
Yeah. There was a time, some of the guilds would just decree somebody a persona non grata. Because it was a very loose, the access to an audience became cultish. Those gates became very narrow. And only those the marketers approved could work. And so you had just a very narrowing of space. What the streamers and the broadcasters that came into the place did was that they opened up the gates so that films were judged on the quality of their, excellence. Filmmakers were judged on their talent, not on who they knew or who they did not know. That's the first thing. The fact that, the gatekeepers were removed and it could become a democratic space, if you could call it that. It just there was just equity in how people could access distribution. But the most important thing for me is the fact that it forced quality. You can't go on any of these platforms unless they'll give you the technical standards. And that included stuff that you had to take cognizance of from the moment of filming. So even if they're just licensing your film, it has to have a certain quality to it. But if they were actually commissioning, or it was an original, you had to go through the whole process of the story process. You had to, everything just had what I would call accountability. That wasn't there before. All you had to do was make a film that a particular marketer liked. And they used to tell you who the actress to use would be. And so there was a total disconnect where people would be used for roles that they were not fit for. Stories will be repeated several times over. There was also an IP thing where people were stealing American stories and just making them into Nigeria without accrediting. So the coming of those platforms, I think, brought accountability to our industry, upped the game in terms of quality, and is causing people to constantly, try to be better today than they were yesterday. Those are the energies that, if we take it into the future, will continue to make us better. So I don't get into the politics of whether it's Netflix or it's Amazon or whatever. But look at Amazon came in, looked at the country, made some commitments, and then when they looked at their numbers or their business model, they didn't think it was profitable enough anyway. They, decided they were done with it, just like that. Who says I don't have a problem with them. I don't think they need to commit to you on your own terms. But what that also says to us is that as long as the back end of these things, and there's something I call it narrative sovereignty. As long as you don't own those conveyor belts yourself, and you don't own the technology that drives them, the money will always become a problem. The business will dictate what they do next. They're not invested in your stories. They're invested in your audience. And as long as that audience is profitable, there will be more platforms coming from everywhere. Nobody owes us anything. We need to put skin in the game. Nigeria needs to fund a distribution platform digitally so that all our creatives are not on YouTube. We have nothing to do with it. Facebook, nothing to do with it. Amazon, nothing. Sony, nothing. We can't even repair cameras here. And we are the highest consumers of camera brands like Sony, Lumix, all these guys. Wow. We don't repair anything. We don't make anything. It's crazy. We have this huge, big industry. Everybody is a creator. It makes no sense. Who's making lights? Who's making C-stands? We can't even make camera tripods. We don't make makeup. We're just consumers. And for this industry to go to the next level, yes, we need the Netflix and the Amazons and the, Apple and all those guys. Yeah, we need them and, the Showmax and MultiChoice. We're very grateful for all of them. But we need indigenization of your source materials. The only source material we have today is our own people, our actors and our stories. But even our stories go back. Because a lot of our stories are urban stories. A lot of our films are trapped inside bedrooms and living rooms. If you watch some of these films, you'll never know what Nigeria looks like. And that's ridiculous. Because there's something called cultural diplomacy. Nigeria is not Lagos. We're not all wearing tight, tight bulging, tight dresses no, we're not Americans. We're not all wearing wigs. Nigeria is also landscapes. Nigeria is also amazing communities that have traditional stories and amazing stuff. We have people with faces that are lived in, that we need to actually tell a story about. This country is so diverse and so beautiful. Not just from drones. You enter into communities, you'll be shocked. And because all our filmmakers are urbanites, we don't really get to see the country, and we need to. We need to see the art of the country. We need to see the crafts of the country. We need designers who are going to design new stuff from our own materials, not just everybody wearing suits. Why is it that all our stories is about taking wisdom from the city to the village, when in fact it was the villagers that gave birth to you in the first place? That's right. Where is the wisdom of the village itself? Where is the worldview of us? There's so much that we've not yet touched in our films. That's why I said our storytelling is trapped and needs to breathe a lot more. That's a long way of answering the question about platforms. I'm not interested in the politics of who came, who didn't come, who's leaving, who's staying, how much they are paying, how much they are not paying. All of that are really not interesting conversations to me because they don't last. The platform can be here today, not here tomorrow. As long as you don't have narrative sovereignty, as long as you don't own anything you don't even have a satellite to do anything. Those are the investments I think Nigeria needs to be making. I'm happy that, previous governments have given filmmakers money to build cinemas, to make film, but I'd rather infrastructural focus Can we make sure that our filmmakers can make film without light going off while they're working so they don't have to pay for generators and diesel? That is a big impact in the budget of everything we do. Can we make sure that, maybe we have a dedicated satellite for our creative industry so that actually we can have many of them create distribution platforms that allows them to actually, get many more Nigerian films into the world space so that nothing is geo-blocked and Nigerian films are projected into Asia, projected into America. Those are investments that I think are fundamental that we need to make. And I'm hoping now we've got quite a few of our own people. Obiasika, Ali, Nuhu, Shuaibu, Hussein, these are core, creative indigenes who I believe have a roadmap that will be able to bring our creativity and our output into a space where there is government making a better context and environment for us to practice and projecting something that's a little more representative of who we are.
Great. I'm particularly excited for where Nollywood will go to. I'm pretty young, I think, and I still have a number of years, and I'm just very passionate about film. I feel like there's a lot that we could tell. There's a lot of narratives that we could change with film in Nigeria. And you talked about spotlighting or talking about people that have invested in the country at large and not just the film space. The need to want to let the young people know that this person was here and contributed largely to what you're seeing today, one way or the other, and which is one of the things that you've done with The Man Died, the story on the big man himself, Mr. Wole Soyinka. But I noticed that you have this thing for documentary, and there's a thing with IREP that you have. I'm in the group here, and I see the conversations. I don't see anything because most of the guys there are like, they're probably, I was very little when, probably they didn't even, they're very OGs.
There's a lot of young people there.
Yeah.
You'd be stunned. Last year at IREP, this year at IREP, because we had IREP in March, we had like 300 entries. Over 100 documentaries were Nigerians.
Wow.
These are young people.
Yeah.
The truth is, a lot of times we make broad assumptions about the industry because, our industry has become like a big elephant. Where you are standing is what you see. Yeah. So if you are standing at the back, you keep calling it a tree trunk. But there are many, many young people who are doing different genres of stuff. And I'm very excited about that because there's a lot of them who also are making documentaries because they want to understand this country, understand their own journey. And also, they understand one thing that I think is important. And all filmmakers have to understand that the past is prologue. History is really your only way of avoiding a bad future. If you do not know your history, you're almost bound to repeat it. And the damage we did to our country was that at some point in our journey, we took history out of school. It was a terrible error by the military government of the time. Because today, there are conversations that are so vital. They may not be comfortable, but they're vital conversations to have. We need to know how the first, republic ended. Why did a few soldiers kill Tafawa Balewa and all the premier and the premier, Ahmadu Bello? There was also, the premier of Akintola. They were killed. They were murdered in cold blood. What were those guys who did it trying to achieve? And then the counter coups that happened. What was that about? We need to kind of understand the story of this country from the past so we understand the role that several different people played that led us to losing 1 million people in a civil war. And we can't be shy to actually walk that journey because we have a large population of young people born several decades after a lot of the conflicts have seemingly been buried under the carpet. And so they get served all kinds of stories depending on whose interest the story serves. And in a political atmosphere, it becomes a deadly thing. It becomes a deadly thing. Why? Because things are being cooked. And then, those who should be our heroes based on their work from the past can become people that we're suspicious of, people that we denigrate, because we just didn't know what their journey was. There's a lot that the military have to answer for. One of it is removing history from schools. They put it back now, but setting up the documentary festival was my way of getting our filmmakers to help us understand who we are. Documentary is not just about history, it's also about the present. But it's also about the issues in the country. There are social issues, there are historical, conflicts, there are also current issues, contemporary, conflicts and dislocations. There are also ways in which documentary helps us to understand the future. What is the world about? Climate is a big issue. How many people are aware of it in Nigeria? Everybody's so focused on making the next lunch, and totally the world in itself is crumbling all around us with the way that we're using it. For me, documentary is so vital to that gap that we've had in Nigeria, where people are not having conversations and logical discussions. People are constantly having arguments. And for me, the social media space is a terrible reflection of that gap. People say things about the country out of ignorance. People have a totally warped impression of what it means to be a citizen. And it's resulting in many things that are difficult. The Japa syndrome is one of it. The brain drain that comes with that. But there's also many things that people need to understand that we need to be discussing. Our educational system is in terrible, terrible state. Nobody's been educated. They just read in books and getting handouts and passing exams, and we are certificate focused instead of innovation focused. We're still creating people who are looking for jobs rather than people who should be creating jobs. And you live in a time now where entrepreneurship does not require so much. But not all of us can call selling stuff selling stuff on social media. It's not entrepreneurship, because out of that has also come this stupid thing of what I ordered and what I got. The dishonesty, the fact that fraud is come to become part of the cultural fabric. All of that needs to be addressed. Our reputation outside the country, you can't carry a Nigerian passport anywhere. But that's not about our government. It's about our behavior when we're out there. And all of that, we need to negotiate with conversations that I believe filmmaking needs to be at the center of. That's why the documentary festival is so important. And I'm very glad that many young people have embraced it. But to your question, yes. All of this is going to be the pathway to growth. Our growth as a country, the resolution of where we are, is not going to be by shouting and by protests and all of that. That's why people like Professor Wole Soyinka, for me, just an example. This is not a biopic. This is simply just about a period in time, Nigeria going to war, and a citizen who understands his own agency, standing up courageously to say, I believe in justice. And I believe that what has been done to a part of the country is not fair. And I don't think a civil war is the answer. And he tried to make peace between Ojukwu and Gowon. And for that, he was imprisoned, put in solitary confinement for 2 years. So he's had skin in the game to keep this country together. He's had skin in the game for justice, for human rights. It's not about him as an author. It's about him as an activist. It's about him as a human rights campaigner. It's about him, setting a space of a Nigeria that has equity as its foundation. And I believe he's been consistent with that. Whether it was 1966 or 1970 during the war, or it was during Nadeko, or during the fuel riots, or during SARS, you will always find him on the side of truth. Now, one of the things that I also think this film does is help us to understand that we all are going to need courage to make Nigeria different. We're not going to change Nigeria from, the safety of our keyboards. It's not going to be through social media. There are times you're going to be physically, uncomfortable. I salute those people, like those who lost their lives during the EndSARS movement. That's the cost. There will sometimes be bloodshed. But the truth is, no country changes conveniently. Many of us have to make that decision, like Soyinka did. But the one other thing I want to talk about, which I think makes the man died interesting, is that Soyinka is an artist. He understands how art can apply pressure to fast track development, to create change. The idea that we're not just filmmakers who are like court jesters. No, we can be change makers. We can let our art, whether it's film, photography, art, literature, poetry, whatever it is, theater, can we talk about what is not quite right about the experience of our country? Can we showcase a political class that needs to take a warning and play different? Can we also, talk about endemic things like ethnocentrism, where in 2024, young men are identifying themselves by their ethnic lineage? And then those things are very important for us to address, because Nigeria is the inequity can only be resolved when we take politics out of our agency and ownership of that office of citizen of Nigeria. We can't survive with ethnicity as a basis of engagement. And that's the dangerous part of this last election that I did not particularly like. You have ethnic criminals just like you have ethnic saints. You have those who also have intermarried across. What are you going to do? The one thing we need to avoid at all costs is another war. Because those 1 million people that died during Biafra are still dead. Yeah. Even though afterwards, both sides said, no, no victor, no vanquished. Yeah, but you need to be alive to say that. Yeah. And I don't think it is our way forward. We can be a great country, but we've got to get
it together. We need to
get it right.
Yeah. So, my last question now is, what was it like working with Professor Wole Soyinka? He recently clocked 90, and he seems very strong. He looked very strong, and for me, it baffles me because I see people in their 80s, 70s, still struggling to keep up or to stay up. Now, what was it like working with someone like that? Having known everything is done over the years, how did you,
For me, we were just joyful that he agreed for us to make the story. The Man Died is a very difficult book because it's mostly inside his head. He was in solitary confinement, so it was about things that he imagined. It was very, it's a script to convert that, adapt it to film. We risk of an incredibly boring film, and what we wanted to do was to make sure that people could be engaged, because our target was really young people, so that they could get a sense of history, but also get a sense of what he had to go through and the courage that he needed to intervene in such a national moment. So for me, he was not that, we were not so worried about working with him. I'm very, very excited when I look at him, because as an artist, he is someone I think has committed his life, dedicated himself to not only his art, but creating it at the highest level of excellence. He's also very prolific. He has written more and done more in theater, in book, in novel, in poetry. He's written and done more, after the Nobel Prize for literature than before. So he's writing a new book in his 80s, Chronicles of the Happiest People on Earth. It's written in his 80s. And so for me, he's an inspiration that way, in that as an artist, not only does his art address, realities and demands that the country have accountability, he's creating art not to be a celebrity. He's just creating art because he's an artist. And his productivity, I think, is really exciting for me. But more than that, I think he inspired a set of people, because all the people that came to work on The Man Died did so because they were inspired by him as an artist. And I think from the writer, Bode Ashinyobi, to the director, Awa Mankpa, to the co-producers, Jaman, Anikulapo, and Makin Shoyinka. But you also had amazing young people that worked on this project that I love. Agbo Kelly was the director of photography, and he did an amazing job. Wisdom was editor. You had, so many different levels of capacities. The line producer, the line production team, with Wale Orosun. Quite a lot of amazing people. Look at the costuming, we just had so many people who came to the game, not just to honor the story, but also to honor the journey of Professor Wale Soyinka.
Wale Ojo. I was going to ask why, but then again, I think about it, I'm like, why not Wale Ojo?
Can you see anybody?
Yeah, exactly. Right. I couldn't think.
Well, I tell you though, Wale Ojo wasn't selected because he looked like Prof. He does have, resemblances like Prof. But Wale Ojo is an amazing actor.
I agree.
And an actor who comes with everything.
Yeah.
He studies. He's read all the books of Wale Soyinka. He's read the poetry. He's read the stage play. That level of preparation. He's been waiting for a role like this all his life. And for me, not only did he, he's a global artist. He's been everywhere. But I like the fact that he's invested in Nollywood. He's telling this is not the first film. He's brought his magic to a lot of Nigerian films, but I think that he continues to do better and better. And in this, my experience with him, I was very excited. But you also have to think of people like Sam Dede. Yeah. Because this film is really, Sam Dede brought the foil, that representation of of the system to play. And but there were so many, young actors as well, who I thought, Similoluwa San did an amazing job as Ojuku, Rockway Wela as Obasanjo, Segilola came to the table, Christina Oshuni as Laide. I'm just blessed that's why I said to you at the beginning, Nigerian actors are magnificent. If you give them the right material that challenges them.
That challenges them,
If you give them lollipop nonsense stuff, they'll
give you that.
they don't even try to improve it. A lot of them improve what was given. And the directors too need to be better. We have some great directors, but we need better directors who can work with the actors, not just to create dialogue and the story, but to bring the backstory to play, to bring context to play, to add, to the performance in the way that challenges the actor to do more, to bring, subliminality to what the words are saying. I think those are the things that we're going to be working on in the next 10 years. And for me, it's fine, because the journey of any film industry is always in progress. When I was growing up, it was Chinese films and Indian films we saw, and they were really bad. But today, you look at them. But why I choose to use them is that they are culturally led industries. They're not replicating Hollywood, and we need to represent ourselves as well. Be proud of our cultures, use our cultures as our leap of space, and create that legitimate film culture that other countries can study and know that represents who we are.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been very insightful. I knew I was going to learn. So, coming to FO, why not?
I'm delighted. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, so I used to do this thing at the end of the show. It's a game, just to ease out of the, deepness of the conversation a bit. So we want to make a film, right? I'll give you a story, and you just very quickly let me know who you would prefer to act like the certain role. So the story is about someone who's trying to change a community. So he's coming from outside, he sees this community, he wants to just bring new stuff into it to make it better, right? Now, there are persons that will tell him that, two guys are telling him now, a man and a woman, you shouldn't waste your time. These guys will not appreciate whatever you're doing. And there's just one person saying, you should do it, you should do it, you should do it. One young person, not directly saying you should do it, but just like a sort of inspiration to the man that this is the reason why I need to change this community. Now, if you were to cast, who would this man be? Who would his two friends who were trying to tell him not to go ahead? And who would this young actor be?
Do you realize you're trying to create, you're trying to bring me into a war with many of my friends? Well, I will not answer that. I could tell you off camera who might come to my mind, but I tell you, these are roles that you could get 100 different Nigerian actors. And this is what people don't realize about me, for instance. I started out making Tinsel. Tinsel is still running. But before that, I'd made Mama Poots, Abobaku. So I had a lot of older actors that I knew. Tinsel I did. But then Battleground went on for 2 years. And in that, there were more than 100 different actors. I've done Brethren, a lot of different actors. I've done Jakba, different actors. I've just finished Covenant, a lot of different actors. So if you calculate all the actors that are my friends, and I just mentioned 3 now for this year. This show will not finish before I start getting calls. So I promise you, I will give you a list of 10. Off camera. Okay. No, I'm going to get it off camera and I'll come back and let you guys know. But thank you very much, Uncle. It's joyful for me to see your work, Dami. Thank you very much for all you do.
Thank you, sir.
And I keep wishing you, the very best.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, guys. And with that, I guess it's a wrap. Thank you.